When 65-year-old Marcus Thompson heard the rumble of 95 Harley-Davidsons surrounding his small electronics repair shop at dawn, his hands trembled against the workbench. The night before, he'd done something that terrified him. He'd told Reaper, the notorious biker gang vice president, that his daughter's $50,000 medical communication device wasn't just broken. It was slowly killing her. Now, as leather-clad bikers filled every corner of his parking lot, engines thundering like Judgment Day, Marcus gripped the edge of his counter and thought about his late wife Eleanor, his empty savings account, and the 20-year-old girl whose desperate eyes had begged him to tell the truth. He'd either saved her life or signed his own death warrant. Before we discover what happens when Reaper reaches Marcus's door, if you believe in people who risk everything to do what's right, even when it's dangerous, would you take just a moment to hit that subscribe button? It means the world to us and helps us share more stories of real courage. And if this story touches your heart, please share it with someone who needs to remember that one person truly can change everything. Thank you so much for being here. The rumble started 3 blocks away, and Marcus Thompson knew exactly what it meant. He'd heard that sound before, yesterday, when one motorcycle arrived. But this wasn't one. This was a rolling thunder that shook the windows of his small repair shop, that made the framed photos on his walls tremble, that sent neighbors scrambling to their doorways to see what was coming. Marcus stood in the entrance of Thompson Electronics, his arthritic hands gripping the doorframe so tightly his knuckles went pale. The dawn sun was just breaking over Phoenix, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, but all Marcus could see was chrome. Chrome and leather. Chrome and leather and 95 pairs of eyes all fixed on him. They came from every direction. Harley-Davidsons rolling in formation, their engines a symphony of power and purpose. They filled his small parking lot, spilled onto the street, lined up along the sidewalk. Leather vests caught the morning light. Patches and insignias told stories Marcus didn't fully understand but respected nonetheless. These were the Hells Angels. All of them. The entire Phoenix chapter. And they'd come for him. Marcus's worn hands trembled against the wood. He was 65 years old. He'd survived 4 decades in electronics, survived losing Eleanor 3 years ago, survived watching his small business slowly die. But standing here, watching Reaper dismount from his custom bike with 94 brothers behind him, Marcus wondered if he'd survive this morning. Last night, he told a dangerous man that his daughter's medical equipment was killing her. Not malfunctioning, not slightly off, killing her. He'd spent 11 hours rebuilding a $50,000 device with nothing but faith, coffee, and memories of his late wife's voice telling him his hands were meant to help people. He'd either performed a miracle or he'd just destroyed the last thing Sarah had to communicate with. Reaper's boots hit the pavement with deliberate purpose. Behind him, 94 men stood silent, waiting. Marcus could see his reflection in Reaper's sunglasses as the massive man approached. His own face looked small, old, terrified. But he didn't step back. He'd made a promise to Sarah, to Eleanor's memory, to himself. If this was Judgment Day, he'd face it standing. To understand why 95 of the most feared men in Arizona came to this humble shop at dawn, we need to go back 18 hours to when everything changed. Thompson Electronics sat on the forgotten side of Phoenix, wedged between a laundromat and a closed-down pawn shop. The hand-painted sign above the door read, "We fix what others won't," in letters that had faded over 10 years of desert sun. Inside, the shop told the story of a man who'd spent his entire life understanding machines better than he understood people. Marcus Thompson was 65 years old, a black technician whose hands bore the scars of 4 decades in electronics. Those hands, gnarled now with arthritis, slower than they used to be, had once assembled circuit boards for medical equipment manufacturers, had calibrated hospital machines, had helped build the early computer systems that revolutionized healthcare. But corporate downsizing doesn't care about expertise. At 55, Marcus found himself unemployed, using his retirement savings to open this tiny repair shop. The workspace was immaculate despite its age. Tools organized by size and function on pegboard walls. A magnifying lamp positioned perfectly over the central workbench. Certifications and licenses covering every available wall space. Proof of 40 years of excellence that customers rarely noticed anymore. In one corner, a Bible sat next to a thermos of coffee. In another, A photo of Eleanor Thompson on their wedding day in 1982, her smile bright enough to light up the fading photograph. Eleanor had passed 3 years ago from diabetes complications, leaving Marcus alone in the small apartment above the shop. They'd never had children, couldn't, though they tried. Instead, Eleanor used to say, Marcus adopted broken things. You care more about strangers' problems than your own bills, she'd tease, watching him fix a neighbor's radio for free while rent notices piled up on the counter. She wasn't wrong. The shop was dying. Marcus knew it. 3 customers last week. 5 the week before. The world had moved on to disposable electronics, to planned obsolescence, to throwing away rather than fixing. But Marcus couldn't stop. His philosophy was simple. If something's broken and I can fix it, I fix it. That's what my hands are for. Eleanor used to finish that sentence for him, even when it means you can't pay yourself. The old gospel music played softly from a radio older than most businesses in the neighborhood. Marcus worked alone now, but the shop never felt completely empty. Eleanor's presence lingered in every corner. In the organized workspace she'd helped him design, in the customer photos she'd insisted he display, in the faith she'd instilled that his skills mattered, that helping mattered, even when the world seemed to have forgotten both. His hands weren't what they used to be. Arthritis made fine work painful, made long days nearly impossible. Some mornings, he could barely grip his screwdriver. But Marcus had learned long ago that expertise doesn't retire just because you do. The knowledge was still there, locked in decades of experience, accessible through hands that remembered what his mind sometimes struggled to recall. And that skill, that ability to see what others missed, to understand the story that broken machines told, that was about to save a life. Marcus didn't know it yet, standing in his failing shop on that Thursday afternoon, organizing tools he might not be able to afford to replace, studying rent notices he wasn't sure how to pay. He didn't know that in approximately 3 hours, everything would change. That a rumble of motorcycle engines would announce an arrival that would give his hands new purpose, his heart new family, and Eleanor's words new meaning. He was just an old technician, trying to make it through another quiet day. But quiet days, Marcus was about to learn, don't last forever. Thursday, 4:47 in the afternoon. Marcus was closing up shop, moving slower than usual because his hands were particularly stiff today. The Arizona heat didn't help the arthritis, and he'd spent most of the day working on a television that probably wasn't worth fixing. But the customer was elderly, on a fixed income, and Marcus couldn't bring himself to tell her to just buy a new one. The rumble of the motorcycle engine cut through the quiet street like a knife. Marcus looked up from locking his toolbox, his heart rate immediately picking up. You don't spend 40 years in working-class neighborhoods without learning to read danger, and the sound of that bike, expensive, powerful, deliberate, spoke volumes. It pulled up directly in front of his shop, chrome gleaming in the late afternoon sun, and the man who dismounted was the kind of presence that made other people instinctively step back. 6'4", maybe 250 pounds, most of it muscle beneath a leather vest covered in patches Marcus recognized immediately. Hell's Angels insignia, Vice President patch, salt and pepper beard, arms sleeved in tattoos, sunglasses that reflected Marcus's own nervous face back at him. You Marcus Thompson? The voice was deep, controlled, the kind that didn't need to shout to command attention. Guy who fixes medical equipment when hospitals give up. Marcus straightened, trying not to show how intimidated he felt. I fix electronics, sir. Whatever needs fixing. But I'm not a doctor. I need to be clear about that. Don't need a doctor. The man pulled off his sunglasses, and Marcus saw tired eyes, worried eyes, father's eyes despite the intimidating exterior. Need someone who understands machines and actually gives a damn. That you? I try to be, sir. A custom van pulled up behind the motorcycle, and Marcus watched as the side door opened and a wheelchair lift began its mechanical descent. The afternoon sun caught on metal and chrome, on medical equipment that looked more expensive than Marcus's entire shop. And then he saw her. The young woman in the motorized wheelchair couldn't have been more than 20. Dark hair braided carefully, band t-shirt, regular jeans. She looked like any college student. But the device mounted to her chair, the sensors on her head, the screen positioned in front of her told a different story. And so did her eyes. Bright, intelligent hazel eyes that held both hope and resignation. The kind of expression Marcus had seen in Eleanor's face during her final months when doctors kept promising the pain was normal. "This is my daughter, Sarah," the man said, and something in his voice softened just slightly. "And I'm Reaper. We need your help." Marcus had no idea that what rolled out of that van would change not just his life, but the lives of hundreds of people he'd never met. He just knew that those eyes, Sarah's eyes, were asking him a question he'd spent 40 years learning how to answer. "Can you fix what's broken?" Sarah's wheelchair hummed softly as Reaper guided it closer to Marcus's shop entrance. Up close, Marcus could see more details: the tension in her jaw, the slight grimace she couldn't quite hide, the way her hands gripped the armrests just a little too tightly. But mostly, he saw intelligence. Those hazel eyes tracked everything, taking in his shop, his tools, his face, making assessments that had nothing to do with the words she couldn't speak. The device mounted to her chair was extraordinary. A tablet-sized screen on an adjustable arm, eye-tracking cameras positioned above it, speakers for synthesized voice output, and a headband with sensors that looked like something from a science fiction film. LED indicators blinked steadily. Diagnostic ports lined one side. This was easily $50,000 worth of technology, maybe more. "Sarah's 20, Reaper explained, his voice carrying that particular tone parents use when they've told this story too many times. "Born with cerebral palsy. Birth complications. Her mother didn't make it." He paused, and Marcus saw the old grief there, worn smooth by time, but never quite gone. "Raised her myself. Brotherhood helped. Got her the best equipment money could buy." Marcus knelt down beside Sarah's chair, moving slowly so as not to startle her, getting to eye level the way he'd learned to do with Eleanor when she was in hospital beds, when being talked down to made her feel less than human. "Miss Sarah, can you show me how this normally sits when you're using it?" Sarah's eyes moved to the device screen, and Marcus watched as she navigated menus with practiced precision. The screen adjusted, and he saw her wince. Just slightly, but it was there. A tightening around her eyes, a small movement that spoke of pain she'd learned to hide. "And your head, where does the sensor band normally rest?" Marcus asked gently, studying the positioning without touching her. He'd learned from Eleanor. You always asked permission. You never assumed access to someone's body or their medical equipment. Sarah adjusted the headband, and Marcus felt his heart sink. The positioning was wrong. Fundamentally, catastrophically wrong. But he needed confirmation. "How long you been getting these headaches, sweetheart?" Sarah's eyes moved to the device. Her eye tracking was slower than it should be, Marcus noted. She was fighting through something to make the technology work. The synthesized voice emerged after several long seconds. "Since day one." The silence that followed was heavy. Reaper's jaw clenched, his hands forming fists at his sides. "You told me it was normal, that it would get better." More slow typing, and Marcus could see how much effort it cost her. "Didn't want to disappoint you. You spent so much." The tears in Sarah's eyes broke something in Marcus's chest. This girl, this brilliant young woman, had been suffering for 6 months in silence because she didn't want to disappoint her father. Because specialists with degrees and certifications had told her the pain was normal, was adjustment, was all in her head. Because a system that should have protected her had failed her so completely that she blamed herself. Marcus Thompson had spent 40 years fixing electronics. Circuit boards, motherboards, medical equipment. He'd worked on hospital machines that kept people alive, diagnostic tools that found diseases, life support systems that gave families more time with their loved ones. He'd assembled components for the earliest communication devices for disabled patients, back when the technology was new and revolutionary. He understood how these machines worked, how they were supposed to work, and, most importantly, how they failed. And in 30 seconds of observation, he saw what $50,000 worth of California specialists had missed. They'd built a masterpiece of technology, but they'd built it for an average user, not for Sarah. They'd used standard measurements, standard protocols, standard everything. They'd never spent a full day watching her use it. They'd never asked about the pain. They'd just told her it was normal and sent her home to suffer. Marcus looked at Reaper, then at Sarah, then back at the device. His hands were already itching to take it apart, to find every flaw, to rebuild it the way it should have been built in the first place. But first, he needed to tell a Hells Angels vice president that everything he'd been told by specialists was wrong. that his daughter had been tortured by the very equipment meant to help her. It was the kind of truth that could get a man hurt. But Marcus looked at Sarah's eyes so much like Eleanor's had been when the pain was bad, and knew he couldn't stay silent. "Can I examine this more closely? Check the internal setup," Marcus asked, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "Do what you need to do," Reaper replied. Marcus began his initial examination, pulling out his multimeter, checking sensor readings, studying calibration data. His hands moved with the practiced ease of 40 years' experience, but his mind was racing ahead, cataloging problems, calculating solutions, understanding just how wrong this whole setup was. His hands stopped. His face changed. "Lord have mercy," Marcus whispered. "What?" Reaper's voice was immediately alert, dangerous. Marcus looked up at Reaper, then at Sarah, then back at the device in his hands. This was the moment. The choice between safety and truth, between self-preservation and doing what was right. "Sir, I can fix what you came here for. But if you want the real problem solved, we need to talk. Privately." Reaper's eyes narrowed behind his sunglasses, but he nodded. "Sarah, stay here, baby girl. Be right back." Marcus led him into the shop, closing the door behind them. Through the window, he could see Sarah watching, her intelligent eyes understanding that whatever was about to be said, it was serious enough that her father didn't want her to hear it first. Inside, surrounded by his tools and Eleanor's photo and 40 years of accumulated knowledge, Marcus took a breath and chose truth. "Mr. Reaper, the device your daughter has, it's killing her. Not malfunctioning, not poorly calibrated, systematically torturing her, hour by hour, day by day. The sensor band is pressing on her temporal arteries. The screen angle is forcing constant eye strain. The neural interface frequency is too high, causing brain fatigue. The battery pack is creating electromagnetic interference. Every single component is technically functional, but fundamentally wrong for her specific body, her specific needs." He could see the problem immediately. Device positioning catastrophically wrong. Sensor band pressing on temporal arteries like a vice. Screen angle forcing eye strain equivalent to staring at a ceiling for 12 hours a day. Calibration causing neural fatigue that explained the brain fog Sarah described. It wasn't an adjustment period. It was systematic torture dressed up as cutting-edge medical technology. Marcus had a choice. Say nothing. Fix the immediate surface problem. Take payment. Stay safe. Let Sarah continue suffering, but avoid confronting a Hell's Angels vice president with the truth that specialists were wrong, that the $50,000 device needed complete rebuilding, that everything Sarah had been told was a lie. Or tell the truth. Risk insulting a dangerous man. Risk being seen as a con artist trying to hustle more money. Risk everything. What Marcus was about to say would either earn him the respect of the most dangerous brotherhood in Arizona or ensure he never opened his shop again. He chose truth. Reaper's face went very still, the kind of stillness that preceded violence. But when he spoke, his voice was controlled, dangerously quiet. "I paid $50,000. I know, sir. And they delivered $50,000 worth of technology. But they didn't deliver what Sarah needs." Marcus pulled up sensor readings on his multimeter, showing Reaper numbers that meant nothing to most people, but everything to someone who understood electronics. This sensor band, calibrated for an average male head size, 23-inch circumference. Sarah measures 20.5 inches. That's 2.5 inches of over-tightening, creating constant pressure on her temporal arteries. That's her headaches. He pointed to the screen positioning. Eye tracking cameras positioned 2 inches too high. She's petite, 5'2" seated. This angle forces her to strain upward constantly. It's like trying to read a book mounted on the ceiling for 12 hours a day. That's her eye strain. Marcus's hands moved over the device, pointing out flaw after flaw. Neural interface frequency calibrated 15% too high for her specific brainwave patterns. That's the brain fog. Battery pack creating electromagnetic interference with the sensors. That's the communication delays. Every single component technically functional, but fundamentally wrong for Sarah specifically. "You're telling me I let my daughter hurt for 6 months because I trusted the wrong people?" Reaper's voice was ice. "You trusted the people you were supposed to trust. That's not on you. But Mr. Reaper, those California specialists built a masterpiece for somebody. Just not for Sarah. They used standard measurements, standard protocols. They never spent a full day watching her use it. They never asked about her pain, They just told her it was normal. Reaper's jaw worked, emotions warring behind his eyes. Marcus could see it. The fury at the specialists, the guilt at not seeing it himself, the fear that his daughter had suffered because he'd made the wrong choice. Can you fix it? I can rebuild it. Custom calibration for Sarah specifically. Proper positioning, correct frequencies, eliminate the interference. But it'll take time, and I'll need to basically disassemble everything. 24 hours, maybe less. And if you're wrong? If you're just some old man trying to hustle me? The threat hung in the air between them, unspoken but very real. Marcus met Reaper's eyes steadily. Then I've wasted a day of your daughter's life, and you have every right to be angry. But Mr. Reaper, I've been fixing things for 40 years. I know what I'm seeing. My brother's here. I let some random technician experiment on my daughter's medical equipment. They'll question my judgment. Then don't let them hear about it until I'm done. Reaper studied Marcus for a long moment, and Marcus could feel the weight of that gaze, the assessment happening behind those tired father's eyes. Why do you care? You could just fix the surface problem, charge me, move on. Marcus looked at Eleanor's photo on his workbench. Because I watched my wife suffer for 2 years before she passed. Doctors said her pain was normal, part of the disease. Wasn't until near the end we found out her medication doses were wrong the whole time. She didn't have to hurt like that. His voice broke slightly. Your daughter's eyes look like my wife's eyes did. That's pain people try to hide because they think it's their fault. I won't be quiet when I see that. Not anymore. The shared grief created a bridge between them. Two men who'd loved and lost and refused to let it happen again when they had the power to stop it. 24 hours, Reaper finally said. You rebuild it. You make it right for Sarah, specifically for Sarah. If it works, name your price. If it doesn't. He didn't finish the threat, but Marcus heard it anyway. If it doesn't, I'll deserve whatever comes. As Reaper turned to leave, he stopped at the door. One more thing. Sarah saved money for 2 years to buy this device. She was so proud when we finally got it. If you fail, you're not just hurting her body. You're breaking her heart. Marcus had just promised to fix a $50,000 medical device in 24 hours with arthritis-gnarled hands, basic tools, and no formal training in advanced AC technology. He either had more faith than sense, or he saw something worth risking everything for. Eleanor's voice echoed in his memory. Those hands are blessed, Marcus. Don't you waste them. He wouldn't. Not this time. After Reaper left with promises to return in exactly 24 hours, Marcus helped Sarah inside his shop. He'd set up an examination chair, really just his comfortable desk chair with cushions, and positioned it near his workbench where she could watch him work. The gospel music played softly. Afternoon sun filtered through dusty windows, painting everything in warm gold. Marcus pulled up his work stool, sitting at her level again. Miss Sarah, before I start taking this apart, I need to understand exactly how it feels when you use it. Not what the specialist said it should feel like. What it actually feels like. Can you tell me? Sarah's eyes moved toward the device screen, but Marcus gently interrupted. Don't use it if it hurts. Just blink once for yes, twice for no. Can we do that? One blink. Surprise flickered in those hazel eyes. Surprise that someone was offering her a way to communicate that didn't involve pain. Does your head hurt right now, even with it off? One blink. Does it hurt worst at your temples? One blink. Behind your eyes? One blink. Does the headband make you feel like your skull is in a vice? One blink, and tears started falling down her cheeks. Marcus gently handed her a tissue, his heart breaking for this young woman who'd been suffering in silence for so long that a simple question about her pain made her cry. Have you been able to tell anyone how bad it really is? 2 blinks. No. Marcus began the careful disassembly, photographing each component, making detailed notes in his old-fashioned paper notebook. Sarah watched him work, and he explained each step to her, treating her not as a patient, but as a partner in understanding what had gone wrong. Inside the access panel, tucked behind the main circuit board where no one would ever look unless they were doing major repairs, Marcus found a folded piece of paper. The edges were worn, like it had been handled many times before being hidden away. He unfolded it carefully. The handwriting was shaky but legible. If anyone finds this, please make it stop. I can't tell Dad because he spent everything. I can't tell doctors because they say it's normal. But it hurts so much. Every day, all day. I just want to talk to people without feeling like my head is splitting open. Please, someone, help me. Sarah. Marcus's hands trembled as he read. He looked at Sarah, who was watching him, tears streaming down her face now, knowing he'd found her desperate message in a bottle. "How long has this note been in here, sweetheart?" Sarah slowly activated the device despite the pain, her determination to answer him outweighing her discomfort. 5 months, 3 weeks. Marcus closed his eyes, grief and anger warring in his expression. 5 months and 3 weeks. Almost the entire time she'd had this device. She'd been screaming for help in the only way she knew how, hiding notes and technology hoping someone would find them during a repair, and nobody had heard her until now. "You've been screaming for help for almost 6 months, and nobody heard you." Sarah typed again, slowly, painfully. "You heard me." Marcus looked at the note, at Sarah, at Eleanor's photo watching over his workbench. He pinned Sarah's note right next to Eleanor's picture. "I'm going to fix this. Not because your father's scary, not because of money. Because you deserve to use your voice without pain. You deserve to be heard, Miss Sarah. And I promise you, on my wife's memory, I will not stop until this is right." He touched the note gently. "That's staying there until I keep my promise to you." Sarah had written a cry for help and hidden it where she thought someone, anyone, might find it during a repair. For almost 6 months, that note stayed hidden. But Marcus Thompson wasn't just any technician. He was a man who understood suffering. And he'd just made a promise he couldn't afford to break. 6 o'clock in the evening, Marcus began the real work. He'd photographed every component, documented every connection, measured every specification. Old-school approach, paper notes, precise measurements, understanding the system completely before changing anything. Sarah watched from her chair, and Marcus kept up a running commentary, explaining what he was finding, what he was fixing, treating her like the intelligent partner she was. The sensor band was the first major problem. Marcus measured Sarah's head circumference carefully, 20.5 inches. The band was calibrated for 23. That 2.5-inch difference meant constant, unrelenting pressure on her temporal arteries every time she wore it. Like wearing a hat 3 sizes too small for 12 hours a day, cutting off blood flow, creating pressure headaches that no amount of pain medication could touch. Marcus needed to recalibrate the entire sensor array, but he also needed to redesign the band structure itself. He pulled out foam he normally used for cushioning delicate electronics, memory foam that could distribute pressure evenly. Using precise measurements taken from Sarah's actual head, not from any standard chart, he cut custom padding. Each piece tested, adjusted, retested until the band would sit comfortably without any pressure points. "Sarah, honey, look straight ahead, comfortable position. Don't strain anything," Marcus instructed at 8 o'clock that evening. He marked the angle carefully. "Now those expensive specialists had you looking up like you're trying to see the sky. Your eye muscles doing work they shouldn't have to do. No wonder you hurt." The screen positioning required fabricating a completely custom mounting bracket. Marcus used aluminum from old wheelchair parts he'd kept. You never threw away good metal when you ran a repair shop, and fashioned a mount that positioned the screen at Sarah's natural eye level, not average user level. Sarah's level. He tested multiple angles, asking her to blink confirmation for each adjustment until he found the exact position that required zero strain. By 10 o'clock, he was deep into the neural interface frequency problem. This was Marcus's specialty, electrical engineering, understanding how circuits and brainwaves interacted. He pulled out his oscilloscope, old but perfectly functional, and tested the brainwave sensor frequencies against Sarah's actual readings. 15% too high. The sensors were calibrated for a different brainwave pattern entirely, forcing Sarah's neural interface to work overtime just to maintain connection. It was like having a high-pitched sound in your head all day, one you couldn't escape, couldn't turn off, couldn't even properly explain because everyone told you it was normal. Sarah stayed awake watching, occasionally typing despite the pain. "Why are you doing this?" Marcus paused in his work, looking at this young woman who'd suffered so much. "Because when I was young, I wanted to be a doctor, wanted to help people. Life took me different direction, electronics, circuits, machines. But helping is helping, Miss Sarah, whether it's a person or the machine that gives them their voice." Midnight arrived with Marcus's arthritis flaring badly. His hands cramped, fingers going stiff and uncooperative. He stopped, ran them under warm water, flexed them carefully. Looking at Eleanor's photo, he felt the doubt creeping in. Eleanor always said, Marcus, the Lord gave you those hands for a reason. Don't you waste them. But Lord, these hands are tired. These hands are old. What if I can't do this? What if I'm not good enough anymore? He looked at Sarah, who dozed off in the chair, her face finally relaxed without the device causing pain. He looked at the note pinned to his bench, at her desperate plea for help. He made fresh coffee and got back to work. 2 in the morning, he discovered the electromagnetic interference. The battery pack was creating a field that disrupted the neural sensors, causing the communication delays and brain fog Sarah had described. Fixing it required complete rewiring, repositioning the power source, adding shielding that should have been there from the factory. This was the most delicate part of the entire rebuild. Marcus's hands shook from fatigue, from arthritis, from the weight of knowing that one wrong connection could destroy everything. But his skill showed through. Decades of experience guiding fingers that remembered what his tired brain sometimes struggled to articulate. Each connection precise, tested, verified. Work that should have taken 30 minutes stretched to 90, but it was perfect when he finished. At 4 in the morning, Sarah woke. She'd been watching Marcus work for hours, seeing his struggle, his dedication, his refusal to give up even when his hands clearly hurt. She typed a message using the old, painful calibration. You should rest. Can't rest while you're hurting, sweetheart. We're almost there. More typing. Sarah struggling with words through the pain, but determined. No one has, ever. Long pause. Listened, this, carefully before. Marcus felt tears prickling his eyes. That's because most people see a disability and think that's all you are. I see a young woman with something to say and equipment that's failing her. Big difference. 5:30 in the morning. Final assembly. All components rebuilt, recalibrated, repositioned specifically for Sarah's body, Sarah's needs, Sarah's life. Marcus triple-checked every connection, his methodical nature refusing to let him rush even though exhaustion pulled at every muscle. He said a quiet prayer over the device, something he'd learned from Eleanor, asking for guidance and strength and please, God, let this work. He powered on the device. Diagnostics green across the board. Sensor readings stable and within proper parameters. No electromagnetic interference detected. All systems responding with the fluidity they should have had from day one. All right, Miss Sarah. Let's see if this old man still has the touch. Marcus had spent 11 hours rebuilding a device that took California specialists 6 months to create. His hands were cramping so badly he could barely hold his tools. His back screamed protest every time he moved. He was running on coffee and faith and the memory of Eleanor's voice telling him his hands were blessed. In 90 minutes, Reaper would return with 94 of his brothers, and Marcus would learn if his expertise was enough or if he'd just made the last mistake of his life. But looking at the rebuilt device, at Sarah's hopeful eyes, at the note still pinned beside Eleanor's photo, Marcus thought maybe, just maybe, miracles still happened in small repair shops on forgotten streets in Phoenix. He was about to find out. 6 o'clock in the morning, dawn breaking over Phoenix with bands of orange and pink stretching across the sky. Marcus cleaned Sarah's face with a warm cloth, gentle and fatherly, treating her with the care Eleanor used to show her patients when she volunteered at the church. He helped Sarah sit up properly, adjusting her position in the chair with careful attention to her comfort. All right, sweetheart, let's try this. Marcus said softly, his voice rough with exhaustion but steady with purpose. He lifted the rebuilt sensor band, the one he'd spent hours customizing for her specific measurements, and positioned it on her head. It slid on easily. No pressure, no tightening, no feeling of a vice around her skull. Sarah's eyes widened immediately. No grimace, no tension in her jaw, no visible pain markers at all. Just surprise, pure, shocked surprise that something could actually feel right. How's that feel? Any pressure? Marcus asked, watching her face carefully. 2 blinks. No. Her eyes looked almost disbelieving, like she'd forgotten what comfort felt like. Marcus adjusted the new mount, positioning the screen at her natural eye level. The custom bracket held it perfectly steady, cameras aligned precisely for her seated height, not for some average user who didn't exist. Don't strain anything. Just look natural. Can you see the screen clearly? 1 blink. Yes. Marcus activated the system, his heart pounding as the new calibration loaded. Sarah's eyes started tracking the menu, and he watched carefully for any sign of discomfort, any indication that he'd miscalculated somewhere. But her eye movement was smooth, natural, flowing across the screen without the hesitation and strain he'd observed yesterday. Sarah navigated to text input, and Marcus saw her eyes moving fluidly. No hesitation, no fighting through pain to make the technology work. She typed quickly, so much faster than before, no pain breaking her concentration or slowing her thoughts. The synthesized voice emerged clear and immediate. "It doesn't hurt." Pause. Sarah seemed to be processing this herself, like she couldn't quite believe it. "It doesn't hurt at all." Marcus's eyes filled with tears, his hand covering his mouth as emotion overwhelmed him. 11 hours of work, of doubt, of pushing through pain and exhaustion, and those 4 words made it all worth it. But Sarah wasn't done. She started typing rapidly, words flowing like she'd been waiting years to say them, like 6 months of suppressed communication was pouring out all at once. "I can think clearly. The fog is gone. My head doesn't throb. The pressure is gone. I can look at the screen without my eyes burning. This is what it was supposed to feel like. This is how I was supposed to be able to talk. Oh my God, I can talk without pain. I can talk." She was crying now, tears streaming down her face, but her eyes never left the screen, typing continuously, making up for months of torture where every word cost too much. "Marcus, you gave me my voice back. My real voice, not the one that hurt to use. Thank you, thank you, thank you." Marcus knelt beside her chair, tears streaming down his weathered face, completely overwhelmed. "Eleanor, I wish you could see this." Sarah typed a question. "Who's Eleanor?" "My wife. She passed 3 years ago. She always said I was meant to help people, even when I thought I was just fixing machines. She was right. You don't just fix machines, Marcus. You fix lives. You fixed mine." The conversation continued, Sarah telling him things she'd kept bottled up for months. Her love of music, couldn't play instruments, but loved listening. Her online friends she talked to through the device, how much she missed being able to communicate easily with them. How the pain had made her withdraw from everyone, because communication had become torture and loneliness seemed preferable. Then came the revelation that broke Marcus's heart all over again. "I have a degree in graphic design. Did all my coursework online. But I stopped taking clients 6 months ago because using this device for hours was unbearable. I've been too ashamed to tell Dad I quit. He's so proud of me." "You didn't quit because you were weak, Sarah. You quit because your equipment was failing you. That's not shame, that's survival. Can I tell you something I've never told anyone? Of course, sweetheart. Sometimes I wished I couldn't communicate at all, because at least then I wouldn't have to choose between the pain of talking and the loneliness of silence. That's a horrible thing to wish for, isn't it?" Marcus took her hand gently. "That's not horrible. That's honest. And you never have to make that choice again." A distant rumble interrupted them, growing closer, unmistakable. Sarah's eyes widened with recognition. "That's Dad." And from the sound of it, he didn't come alone. Marcus had kept his promise. Sarah could communicate without pain for the first time in 6 months. But now he had to face the judgment of 95 Hell's Angels who were about to see if this old black technician was a miracle worker or had just gotten lucky once. And there's a big difference between the two. They came like an army. Not just Reaper returning alone or with a few brothers for backup. 95 motorcycles rolling in formation, filling Marcus's small parking lot, spilling onto the street, lining the sidewalks. Chapter members, prospects, officers, road captains, enforcers. The entire Phoenix Hell's Angels chapter come to witness whatever was about to happen in this small repair shop on the forgotten side of town. Marcus stood in the doorway, heart pounding, watching chrome and leather and overwhelming force surround his business. Neighbors appeared in windows and doorways, watching nervously. This was the kind of arrival that changed neighborhoods, that got remembered, that meant something significant was happening. But Sarah beside him typed quickly on her newly rebuilt device, her synthesized voice calm. "Don't be scared. They came to witness. Dad wanted the whole chapter to see if you're as good as you claimed. It's a respect thing. And if I'm not?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Then we'll handle it together." "But Marcus, I feel better than I have in 6 months. You are that good." Reaper dismounted slowly from his custom Harley, his leather vest catching the morning sun, patches telling stories of decades in the Brotherhood. The other bikers formed a semicircle behind him, a wall of leather and judgment, all watching with serious faces that gave nothing away. This was a test, Marcus realized, not just of his technical skill, but of his character, his honesty, his worthiness to be trusted. "Brought the family," Reaper said, his voice carrying across the parking lot. "Figured they should see this." "I understand, sir," Marcus replied, trying to keep his voice steady. Reaper approached Sarah's wheelchair, and Marcus saw the father's practiced eye-taking in details, the device positioned differently, the new sensor band, but most importantly, his daughter's face. Relaxed. No tension in her jaw. No grimace. No visible pain markers. Just alertness and something Reaper probably hadn't seen in months. Genuine comfort. "Baby girl, how you feeling?" Sarah's response came so quickly that Reaper's eyes widened in shock. No labored typing, no long pauses between words. Just fluid, natural communication. "Dad, I can talk. Really talk. Fast. Easy. No pain. At all. For the first time since we got this thing, I can just talk. Watch." She demonstrated, navigating menus fluidly, typing complex sentences without hesitation, her eyes bright and alert and completely pain-free. She was even smiling, actually smiling while using the device that had tortured her for 6 months. Marcus found the note I hid. He listened to every single thing I couldn't say out loud. He saw what all those expensive specialists missed, that I'm not average-sized, that I have specific needs, that the pain wasn't in my head. He rebuilt everything for me, not for some generic user. He gave me my voice back, Dad. My real voice. Reaper's jaw clenched, emotions warring across his face. He knelt beside Sarah's chair, taking her hand. "You hit a note? You've been suffering and hiding it. I didn't want to disappoint you. You spent so much money. I thought something was wrong with me." Reaper's eyes filled with tears. This tough biker who'd seen and done things Marcus couldn't imagine, breaking down in front of his entire chapter because his daughter had been suffering in silence. "Baby, nothing's wrong with you. Nothing has ever been wrong with you." He stood, turning to face his brothers, taking off his sunglasses to show emotion openly. "This man, who met my daughter yesterday, spent all night fixing what $50,000 couldn't buy. Fixed what specialists with degrees said was perfect. He saw Sarah, really saw her, when everyone else just saw a case number." Reaper turned to Marcus, extending his hand. "Name your price." "I don't want payment, Mr. Reaper. I did what needed doing." But Reaper shook his head. "That's not how this works. You help my family, you become family. And family takes care of each other." He pulled out his phone, made a quick call. "It's real. Get everyone you know." Hanging up, he looked at Marcus with an intensity that was somehow both intimidating and hopeful. "How many disabled people you think there are in Phoenix?" I don't know, sir. Thousands. Veterans, accident victims, birth conditions. Thousands of people stuck with equipment that doesn't fit, doesn't work right, causes pain. Because the system treats them like numbers instead of people." Other bikers nodded, murmuring agreement. Then an older veteran named Tommy stepped forward, limping badly. "My prosthetic never fit right. VA says it's fine. Kills me every day. You think you could look at it?" A woman named Maria spoke up, hearing aids visible. "These audiologist-fitted hearing aids give me migraines. They say it's just sensitivity. But maybe." One by one, bikers came forward. Each one had a story, a family member, a friend, themselves, stuck with inadequate medical equipment. Specialists who wouldn't listen. Systems that failed vulnerable people. And they were all looking at Marcus with hope, asking if maybe, just maybe, someone would finally hear them the way he'd heard Sarah. Reaper's voice cut through the murmurs. "Here's the deal, Marcus Thompson. You're about to become the most important person in this community. We're going to send everyone we know who's suffering with bad equipment. You're going to fix them the way you fixed Sarah. For free. Mr. Reaper, I can't afford. We'll supply everything. Tools, parts, materials, money for your rent. You supply the skill and the heart. We take care of our own. And as of right now, you're one of ours." He extended his hand, and 94 bikers waited for Marcus's answer. Marcus looked at Sarah, smiling and pain-free. Looked at Eleanor's photo watching from inside the shop. Looked at his arthritic hands that hurt but still worked, still remembered, still had purpose. Looked at 95 bikers offering him not just support but family, community, meaning. I'm 65 years old with arthritis and a failing business. But if my hands can still help people, then I guess they've got more work to do. He took Reaper's hand. I'm in. The Brotherhood erupted in cheering, applause, bikers clapping Marcus on the back and coming forward with embraces. Acceptance. Respect. Family. Marcus Thompson, a 65-year-old black technician whose shop had been dying yesterday, had just been adopted by the Hells Angels and given a mission that would change hundreds of lives. But he had no idea that what started with one rebuilt device would become something much bigger than he ever imagined. The system had failed Sarah for 6 months, but Marcus had refused to look away. And now, with the support of a brotherhood most people feared, he was about to show the world that people deserve better than a system that treats them like numbers. Monday morning arrived with Tommy limping through Marcus's door at 7 a.m. sharp. The Vietnam veteran was 70 years old, and every step looked like it cost him. His prosthetic leg, the one the VA insisted was perfectly fitted, had been causing hip damage for what Tommy now admitted was 15 years. They keep telling me it's just age, Tommy said, lowering himself carefully into Marcus's examination chair. But brother, I know the difference between getting old and something being wrong. Marcus studied the prosthetic with the same careful attention he'd given Sarah's device. Within 20 minutes, he found it. The socket alignment was 3 degrees off. 3 tiny degrees that meant Tommy had been walking with one leg effectively shorter than the other since 1972. Like wearing one high heel and one flat shoe, Marcus explained, already reaching for his tools. Every single step, your body compensating, your hip taking damage it was never meant to take. The fix took 4 hours. Marcus adjusted the socket angle, repositioned the knee joint, added custom cushioning that the VA's standard protocol never included. When Tommy stood up and took his first steps, he stopped mid-stride, face crumpling. I forgot, Tommy whispered, tears streaming into his gray beard. I forgot what it felt like to walk without thinking about every step. 47 years, brother. 47 years. He pulled off his military dog tags, worn smooth from decades against his chest, and pressed them into Marcus's hands. You earned these more than I ever did. Tuesday brought Maria, the biker with hearing aids that gave her migraines. The audiologist had blamed her oversensitive ears, but Marcus found the real culprit in minutes, a feedback loop in the programming creating a constant high-pitched interference only she could hear. They told me I just needed to adjust, Maria said as Marcus recalibrated the frequency response, adjusted compression ratios, created custom programs for different environments. Said I was being difficult. When she put the hearing aids back in, her face went absolutely still. The ringing stopped. Oh God, the ringing stopped. I haven't had silence in 2 years. Wednesday was 8-year-old Carlos, who had cerebral palsy and a communication device similar to Sarah's. But his device had been designed for adults. Too complex, too many options, creating frustration that was manifesting as behavioral issues at school. Marcus spent the afternoon simplifying the interface, creating picture-based shortcuts, adjusting response time for a child's motor control, adding fun sounds and bright colors that made communication feel like play instead of work. When Carlos used it for the first time, his synthesized voice rang out clear and joyful. Thank you, Marcus. His mother collapsed in Marcus's shop, sobbing into her hands. That's the first complete sentence he's communicated in months. The first one. Thursday and Friday blurred together. A wheelchair with a stuck brake that was an accident waiting to happen. A walker calibrated for someone 6 inches taller causing back damage. A powered scooter with faulty controls that had already caused 2 falls. Each one a story. Each one a person. Each one a life improved, not just physically, but emotionally. Because what Marcus gave them wasn't just fixed equipment. It was the gift of being seen, being heard, being valued. The shop transformed. No longer empty and echoing with failure. It filled with people and purpose. Bikers helped coordinate schedules. Sarah volunteered, using her pain-free voice to comfort others waiting for help. Gospel music mixed with laughter. Coffee brewed constantly. Community formed in that small space like something alive and growing. By Friday, Marcus started pinning photos on the wall. Every person he helped, their names written below each image. The bikers started calling it Thompson's Miracles. By Friday evening, there were 23 photos. 23 people who'd arrived hopeless and left transformed. Not just in their bodies, but in their spirits, because someone had finally listened long enough to understand. Marcus stood looking at that wall as the sun set, his arthritic hands aching but satisfied. Eleanor's photo still watched from his workbench, and he could almost hear her voice. "Told you those hands were blessed, Marcus. Told you." But he had no idea that word was spreading faster than anyone anticipated. And what happened the following Monday would test whether one old man's hands could handle what was about to come. Monday morning, week 2. Marcus arrived at his shop at 5:45 a.m., earlier than usual because his hands had kept him awake most of the night. The arthritis was flaring badly, swelling, stiffness, pain that radiated up to his elbows. But when he turned the corner onto his street, his heart sank. 40 people waited outside his shop. The line stretched around the block. News vans were parked across the street, cameras ready. Word had spread through disability communities, veteran networks, online forums. Everyone knew about the old technician who actually listened, who actually fixed what specialists couldn't or wouldn't. Marcus was overwhelmed before he even unlocked the door. The days blurred into an exhausting haze. 16-hour workdays became normal. Marcus barely ate, just coffee and whatever food people brought him. Barely slept, maybe 4 hours a night on the cot he'd set up in the back room. He was losing weight, his clothes hanging looser, his face gaunt with exhaustion. Sarah noticed. "Marcus, you need to rest. You're going to hurt yourself. Can't rest while people are hurting, sweetheart. Just need to push through." She typed her response carefully. "That's what I said about my device. Look where that got me." But Marcus couldn't stop. Wouldn't stop. Each person who walked through his door had a story of suffering, of being dismissed, of systems that failed them. How could he turn them away? Wednesday afternoon, his hands gave out. Marcus was working on a powered wheelchair, trying to adjust the control mechanism, when his fingers simply refused to grip the screwdriver. The tool clattered to the workbench. His hands shook uncontrollably, swollen and red, joints screaming in protest. A client was waiting. More people in line outside. And for the first time in 40 years, Marcus Thompson couldn't do the work. "Lord, I said I'd help. But these hands are giving out. What good am I if I can't work? All these people depending on me, and I'm failing them. Just like I'm failing Eleanor's memory. Just like I'm failing everything." He tried to continue, forcing his fingers around the tool. But he dropped it again, hands shaking so badly he couldn't hold anything. "You okay?" the client asked, concern in their voice. "I'm fine," Marcus lied. But he wasn't. The door swung open. Reaper walked in, took one look at Marcus's face, at his trembling hands, at the exhaustion carved into every line of his body, and read the situation immediately. "Everyone out. We're closed today." "But they need," Marcus protested weakly. "They need you healthy more than they need you dead. Shop's closed." Reaper's voice carried the kind of authority that made people move without question. Within minutes, the shop was empty except for Reaper, Sarah, and Marcus sitting at his workbench looking defeated. "You're one man, Marcus. Can't save everyone yourself." "I have to try." "No. You have to be smart. Can't help anyone if you work yourself into a grave." Reaper's voice softened. "My daughter walked away from work she loved because her equipment was killing her. Don't make me watch you do the same thing." Marcus stared at his swollen hands, hands that had fixed so much but were now broken themselves. He'd spent his whole life believing that if he just worked hard enough, cared enough, fixed enough, everything would be okay. But some problems can't be solved by one person alone. Even miracles need help. Thursday evening, Reaper called a brotherhood meeting. All 95 chapter members packed into Marcus's shop, standing room only. Sarah was there, using her device confidently. Tommy came, walking without his limp. Maria stood near the back. Several people Marcus had helped over the past 2 weeks attended, wanting to give back somehow. Marcus sat at his workbench, hands wrapped in ice packs, feeling useless. Reaper stood at the center and didn't waste words. "Brother Marcus is running himself into the ground because he's got a heart bigger than sense. We brought him this mission, we need to support it right. Ideas. Now." Tommy stood first, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd led men in combat. "I worked maintenance for 30 years before retiring. I can learn basic repairs, take some of the load off." Maria raised her hand. "I'm a nurse. Can handle initial assessments, triage who needs what." Another biker named Carlos, different from the 8-year-old boy, stepped forward. "I fix bikes, but mechanics is mechanics. I can help with physical modifications. Sarah's synthesized voice cut through the murmurs. I have graphic design skills. I can create documentation, instruction manuals. Make it easier to replicate Marcus's methods. The ideas came faster then. Create a system, assessment, prioritization, team repair approach. Marcus would handle the complex cases and teach others the simpler ones. Bikers would provide labor, materials, organization. Sarah would manage schedules and documentation. They'd rotate helpers to prevent anyone burning out the way Marcus had. We need funding, someone pointed out. We fundraise, Reaper said simply. Charity rides, events. I'll talk to local businesses about donations. Medical supply companies for discounts. The news coverage we're getting will bring more donations. We need a name, Sarah typed. Something that shows what we really do. Marcus looked up from his ice packs. What do we do? We listen. That's what makes this different. You listen to what people need instead of telling them what they should want. The Listening Project? Tommy suggested. Marcus shook his head slowly. No. Listening and liberty. Because being heard sets you free. The room went quiet for a moment. Then agreement rippled through the brotherhood. Reaper nodded. Listening and liberty it is. L&L. I like it. We should expand this, another biker suggested. Contact other chapters. Find technicians in other cities. Create a network. The plan took shape through the evening. A nationwide network of people who actually listened, supported by brotherhood chapters that protected and provided. A movement built on the simple principle that every person deserved equipment that worked for their specific body, their specific needs, their specific life. Friday morning, the shop reopened with the new system in place. Marcus was still central, his expertise irreplaceable, but now he was supported. Sarah managed the flow of clients. Tommy and Carlos handled simpler cases under Marcus's supervision. Maria did initial assessments, determining who needed what level of care. The system worked. Marcus stood at his workbench that evening, looking at Eleanor's photo. Took me 65 years to learn this lesson, Eleanor. Can't do everything alone. But together we can do miracles. The results spoke for themselves. Week 3, 67 people helped. Week 4, 89 people helped. Month 2, 340 people helped. Each one a story, a smile, a transformation. The wall of photos kept growing, covering more and more of Marcus's shop walls. Every face told a story of suffering ended, of dignity restored, of voices finally heard. Marcus had learned that the greatest strength isn't working until you break. It's knowing when to let others help carry the weight. And the Hells Angels Brotherhood was about to show him just how far that strength could reach. 6 months later, Marcus stood in a shop space 3 times the size of his original location. The rent was paid by Brotherhood fundraising. Professional equipment lined the walls, donated by manufacturers who'd finally started paying attention. A team of 15 people trained by Marcus worked at different stations, each handling cases appropriate to their skill level. The wall of photos now held over 400 faces. 23 Hells Angels chapters across the United States had adopted the model. Each chapter found a local technician with Marcus's ethics and expertise, retired engineers, former military mechanics, electronics specialists who'd been sidelined by corporate downsizing. The Brotherhood provided the same support structure they'd given Marcus: funding, materials, organization, protection. Listening and Liberty locations operated from Seattle to Miami, from Boston to San Diego. Free services for the disabled community. Equipment rebuilt with care instead of protocol. People listened to instead of dismissed. The media couldn't get enough of the story. The mechanic and the bikers who changed everything ran on national news. Documentary crews followed Marcus and various L&L locations. But Marcus stayed humble, deflecting attention. In one interview, his response was simple: I'm just an old man with tools. The real heroes are the people who survived with inadequate equipment and never gave up, and the brothers who believed in helping instead of judging. The medical community's response was mixed. Some specialists were defensive, seeing L&L as an attack on their expertise. Others reached out to learn, recognizing that patient-centered design required input from patients, not just engineers. A dialogue began, uncomfortable but necessary, about how medical equipment was designed, tested, and prescribed. VA hospitals took particular notice. Too many veterans were walking through their doors with Marcus's business card, equipment finally working properly after years of complaints being dismissed. Then the letter arrived. Marcus's hands trembled as he opened the envelope from California, the same medical device manufacturer that had built Sarah's original equipment. His heart pounded, expecting legal threats, cease and desist orders. Instead, he found something that made him cry. Dear Mr. Thompson, we have reviewed the modifications you made to our AAC device for Miss Sarah Johnson. Your calibration approach and customization philosophy have revealed significant gaps in our standard protocols. We would like to offer you a consultant position to help us redesign our patient assessment process. Additionally, we are issuing a voluntary recall of devices manufactured with our previous protocols and offering free recalibration to all users. Your approach has taught us that engineering excellence means nothing if we don't listen to the people using our devices. Thank you for showing us what we were missing. Respectfully, Dr. Catherine Williams, Chief Design Officer. Marcus sat at his workbench, tears streaming down his weathered face. This meant everyone with that device would get help, potentially thousands of people, all because he'd refused to stay silent when he saw Sarah suffering. Marcus. Sarah wheeled up beside him. I need to tell you something. What is it, sweetheart? I got accepted. Full-ride scholarship. Stanford. Biomedical engineering with focus on assistive technology design. I'm going to become the person I needed 6 months ago. Marcus hugged her, both of them crying now. Your mama would be so proud. Your daddy is so proud. I wouldn't be here without you. Literally. I'd given up. But you saw me. The ripple effects kept spreading. Carlos, the 8-year-old boy, was now excelling in school, his teachers amazed at the transformation. Tommy was mentoring other disabled veterans, teaching them that pain wasn't something they had to accept as normal. Maria had organized disability support groups throughout Phoenix. Each person Marcus helped was helping others, creating exponential impact. The cost was real. Marcus's arthritis wasn't better, would never be better. But he worked shorter hours now, delegated more. And he wasn't alone anymore. He had family, purpose, legacy. That evening, Marcus stood at Eleanor's photo. Remember when you said these hands were meant to help people? You were right, baby. Took me losing you to fully understand it. But I get it now. Thank you for believing in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. From one 20-year-old girl suffering in silence, to a nationwide movement changing thousands of lives. From a failing shop and an isolated old man, to a community built on listening and compassion. But the most important transformation wasn't in the equipment Marcus fixed. It was in the hearts he touched. 1-year anniversary. The celebration filled the new shop and spilled into the parking lot. All 95 Phoenix chapter members attended. Over 400 people Marcus had helped came from across Arizona and beyond. News crews, community leaders, families. Everyone wanted to witness this moment. A banner stretched across the building. Listening and liberty. 1 year of freedom. The parking lot was a beautiful chaos of motorcycles and wheelchairs, leather vests and medical equipment. Tough bikers laughing with elderly disabled veterans. Music played. Food cooked on grills. Joy and celebration filled the desert air. Reaper stood at a microphone, his voice carrying across the crowd. A year ago, I brought my daughter to a stranger's shop because I was desperate. The specialists had failed her. I had failed her. I needed help I didn't know how to ask for. He paused, emotions visible despite his tough exterior. Marcus Thompson didn't just fix a device. He taught us all what it means to truly see someone. To listen not with our ears, but with our hearts. To understand that technical skill without compassion is worthless, but compassion with skill can change the world. He gestured to the crowd. Look around. 400 people here today who were suffering in silence. 400 voices heard. 400 lives transformed. And it started because one old man refused to stay silent when he saw pain. The applause was thunderous. Sarah wheeled forward, using her device confidently, no pain in her eyes. I wrote a note a year ago. I hid it in my equipment because I had given up on anyone hearing me. That note said, please make it stop. She paused for effect, making sure everyone understood. Marcus found that note. And he didn't just make it stop. He made it right. But more than that, he made me believe I deserved to be heard. That my pain mattered. That I mattered. Reaper's hand rested on her shoulder, pride and love evident. I'm leaving for Stanford in 2 weeks. I'm going to become an engineer who designs technology the way Marcus fixes it, by listening first. Every device I ever create will have one simple rule. If the person using it hurts, the device is wrong. Not the person. Never the person. The standing ovation lasted nearly a minute. Tommy walked to the front. Walked without even a trace of his old limp, carrying something wrapped in cloth. Each person Marcus helped contributed something to this. Dog tags, patches, medals, tokens of respect. We melted them down and created something. He unveiled a bronze plaque, its surface gleaming. Marcus Thompson. He fixed what others couldn't because he listened when others wouldn't. In grateful memory of Eleanor Thompson, who knew her husband's hands would save lives. Marcus's hands shook as he touched the plaque, seeing Eleanor's name there, immortalized. He broke down completely, decades of grief and joy and purpose overwhelming him. When he could finally speak, his voice trembled. I'm just an old technician who fixes things. That's all I ever knew how to do. He paused, composing himself. When Eleanor died, I thought my purpose died with her. I was just waiting out my time in that failing shop, counting down to nothing. Then Mr. Reaper and Miss Sarah walked into my life, and everything changed. Looking at the crowd, at all those faces he'd helped, Marcus felt something break open in his chest. You all taught me something I'd forgotten. That every person has a story. Every person has pain. And every person deserves someone who'll listen long enough to understand. I may have fixed your equipment, but you fixed my broken heart. You gave me family when I thought I'd be alone. You gave me purpose when I thought I was used up. Tears flowed freely. Eleanor always said, Marcus, those hands of yours are blessed. Don't you waste them. Baby, I hope I made you proud. I hope I didn't waste these hands. A large truck pulled up then, branded with Listening and Liberty Mobile Unit on its side. Full diagnostic and repair equipment filled the interior, ready to travel to homebound patients. Reaper grinned. You taught us to go where people need help, not wait for them to come to us. This is for the people who can't leave their homes. The forgotten ones. Now we can reach them too. The legacy was undeniable. 23 locations nationwide. 2,000 people helped in the first year. Training programs for new technicians. Partnerships with medical schools. Sarah heading to Stanford to change the industry from within. Model being studied by VA hospitals. Lives saved, voices restored, dignity returned. Evenings settled over the celebration, the party winding down to comfortable conversation. Marcus sat on a stool in the shop doorway, watching the sunset paint the sky. Sarah wheeled up beside him. Reaper joined them, and for a moment, the three of them just sat in comfortable silence. Three people who'd found family in the most unexpected place. What are you thinking about? Sarah asked. I'm thinking that a year ago, I thought my life was ending. Turns out it was just beginning. Reaper chuckled. Still can't believe you fixed all this in one night. Marcus smiled. Had good motivation. Scary biker father and his daughter's hidden cry for help. Tends to focus the mind. You know what the best part is? Sarah typed. Every person you've helped is out there helping someone else now. The listening keeps spreading. Marcus looked at the sunset, at his hands, still arthritic, still painful, but still blessed. Eleanor used to say that God puts people in your path for a reason. I think she was right. Your wife sounds like she was pretty smart, Reaper said quietly. The smartest. She knew I was meant to help people. Took me 65 years and meeting you two to understand how. The camera pulls back slowly, showing them silhouetted in the doorway. Behind them, the wall of 400 photos. Outside, bikers and families mingling. Wheelchairs and motorcycles side by side. A community that shouldn't exist, but does. Love that transcends differences. Hope built on listening. Marcus's voice carries over the image. People ask me what I do now. I tell them the same thing I told my wife 40 years ago. I fix things. But I learned something this year. Sometimes what's broken isn't the equipment. It's the system that thinks it knows better than the people who are hurting. So I fix that too. One person at a time. One voice at a time. One moment of listening at a time. Marcus has now helped over 2,000 people across 23 states. Sarah graduated Stanford with highest honors and now designs assistive technology for a major manufacturer. The Hells Angels Listening and Liberty program operates in 47 chapters nationwide. Medical device manufacturers have implemented user-first testing protocols based on Marcus's methods. Tommy, Carlos, Maria, and 43 others Marcus trained now run their own L&L locations. The hidden note Sarah wrote, "Please make it stop," is displayed at Stanford's Assistive Technology Center with the caption, because someone listened. Marcus Thompson still works 4 days a week at age 66. He says he'll retire when people stop hurting. His hands aren't finished yet. Eleanor Thompson's name is inscribed on every device modified through listening and liberty. With her husband's words, she knew these hands would help people. She was right. Marcus's story proves that one person with skill and heart can change everything. But he didn't do it alone. He needed Sarah's courage to speak truth. He needed Reaper's willingness to trust. He needed a brotherhood that valued people over pride. And he needed to stand against a system that treats vulnerable people like numbers instead of humans. Here's what I need from you right now. First, if you refuse to let systems silence people in pain, if you believe suffering should be heard, not dismissed, hit that subscribe button. Because every subscription tells the algorithm to show stories like this to more people. The trolls who say they're just complaining won't subscribe. But you will. Take a stand. Second, comment your location and I will listen. Show the world that people who refuse to ignore suffering exist in every city, every country. Let's build a global community that stands against systems that fail vulnerable people. If you can't stand systems that dismiss pain, comment no more silence. Make your voice count. Third, share this with someone who needs to remember that their pain matters, their voice matters, they matter. Someone out there is suffering in silence right now, just like Sarah was. They need to know that people like Marcus exist. That someone will listen. The world tried to tell Sarah her pain was normal. The system told her the equipment was perfect. The experts, the ones with degrees and credentials, said nothing was wrong. They were all lying. And Sarah almost gave up hope. But Marcus refused to side with the system. He chose truth over comfort. He chose listening over dismissing. Who in your life needs someone to really listen? Tell us in the comments. What part of Marcus's journey resonated most with you? Are you the person suffering in silence? Or are you the person who refuses to look away? Because you don't need a patch or a degree to make a difference. You just need to care enough to see people, really see them, and refuse to stay silent when systems fail them. If you stand against systems that dismiss vulnerable people, comment, I stand for listening. If you believe credentials mean nothing without compassion, comment compassion over credentials. Take a side. Make it known. We'll see you in the next story, where ordinary people do extraordinary things. Until then, remember, your pain is real. Your voice matters. And someone is listening.